It comes from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5, verses 21 through 43. These are some stories of Jesus healing. When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was by the sea. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue named Jairus came, and when he saw him, fell at Jesus' feet, and begged him repeatedly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." So he went with him. And a large crowd followed him and pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. She had endured much under many physicians and had spent all that she had, and she was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, for she said, "If I but touch his clothes, I will be made well." Immediately her hemorrhage stopped, and she felt in her body that she had been healed of her disease. Immediately aware that the power had gone forth from him, Jesus turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you. How can you say, 'Who touched me?'" He looked all around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, fell down before him, and told her the whole truth. Jesus said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." While he was still speaking, some people came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." He allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the house of the leader of the synagogue, he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. When he entered, he said to them, "Why do you make commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. Then he put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha kum," which means, "Little girl, get up." And immediately the girl got up and began to walk. She was about 12 years of age. At this they were overcome with amazement. He strictly ordered them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat. This is the good news of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Get my water. I understand that's a very important preaching tool during the minutes. And microphone. First, we'll have a little drink. We should have some more drinking music. No. No for next week. Would you please pray with me? Gracious and loving God, may these words of my mouth and this meditation of my heart be filled with your Spirit and filled with your truth. And may it be heard with open ears and open hearts and open minds, and bring us a message that we need to hear for our lives today, for our world today, for our church today, and for your eternal kingdom. Amen. Several years ago, my niece Lucy came to visit me when I was a pastor up in San Luis Obispo. It was about this time of year, and she was just about to turn 13. It was a sort of rite of passage trip, because she was traveling all by herself, flying from Chicago, and we were going to spend a week of quality one-on-one, get to know one another time. And certainly we spent a lot of time doing some fun touristy things up at the Central Coast of California, and we did a lot of great bonding. But my favorite thing that we did was make a movie. We made our little movie on a Saturday afternoon, late Saturday afternoon. It took about an hour. Lucy just opened up her computer and just pointed at somewhere and hit a button, which I have never seen before. Truly, the old fuddy-duddy Auntie Jane. But that's all that she needed. And it was just going to be the two of us making this movie. It took about an hour, and we were only going to shoot it in the house and in the parsonage backyard. And pretty much with just stuff that we had around the house, except we did raid the church costume closet. Then we had finally our little film, and it was a true work of art. This little film that we did, it was a black and white, silent, 5-minute film telling the story of the woman being healed of her hemorrhages, one of the stories that we find in our scripture today. And again, this is a film that took us an hour to shoot. It took about an hour to edit. It was just the two of us. It was just at home in the backyard. And this is pretty much how it went. First, there was a shot that Lucy found on Google Images of a large crowd. So she zoomed it in and zoomed it back to make it look like there were a lot of people. And then there's a little card, that title card that she placed in that said, "A large crowd followed Jesus and testing on him." And another little card says, "A woman had been suffering from hemorrhages," in parentheses, bleeding, for 12 years. And that's where I come in. I'm in a striped bathrobe, long striped bathrobe with a good piece of burlap over my head, and because of course I've been suffering for a long time. This is a silent film, so you must really emote. And I'm going to make it look like there's been a lot of time that I've been suffering. We took the kitchen wall off the clock and we turned the hands around really fast. You know, it'll be really good in our communication. And then there's a title card that says, "She had endured much under many physicians." And the way we decided to communicate this was to show, I have a shot of all 4 of our hands, 2 pairs of hands, each with latex gloves on them, and then we handed various medical items to one another, like nurses do the doctors and when they're in surgery. So first there was a stethoscope, a toy stethoscope, and then there was a big handful of pills, and a big box of Band-Aids, and then one of those big plastic bulbs that are used for ear drainage. Pass that along, and some tweezers. Clearly, this woman had endured much. And then a card says that she'd given everything, she'd spent all her money. And then we have a shot of some paper $50,000 bills, play $50,000 bills raining onto the floor. And we were really on a roll, so then we put another card in that said, and she continued to endure even more. And these gloves, hand gloves, these gloved hands pass along a large meat knife, and then a hammer, and a saw, and she spent even more money. There was more money following. And then there were their experimental treatments. And you see these hands bringing along a large box of baking soda. Solves everything, doesn't it? And then a toilet plunger. This time, we're just looking around the house for whatever looked weird and interesting shapes. And then finally, we brought into the camera a large bust plastic head of Mr. T, which I actually had on hand. So let's have Mr. T part of this. And pass it along, and then a title card says, "I pitied the fool who won't heal this woman." How can you top Mr. T is a possible healing agent? So then we went on to the story, and then you see me crying and really sad because it says, "She grew no better, but grew worse." I'm really despairing and crying, and then there's sad music during that, and then there's happy music or majestic music that starts as a title card that comes in and says, "She heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd." Now, how are we going to do this with just 2 of us? So we had several of those Bible tunics that was taken from the church. We hung them on a windowsill, and you just see my arms trying to touch them and get through, and praying and touching and praying and touching. And then the title card says, "And she touched his cloak, for she said, 'If I could touch the hem of his clothes, I will be made well.'" And so this is where Lucy comes in. You actually see just like the bottom part, her ankles and her feet with that thongs on, and the bottom of her tunic. And I gently tug at that little hem. And then suddenly the film goes to color. And there's all sorts of big sound effects and lighting effects and all that sort of thing. As I am now in the backyard, and I'm skipping and twirling and doing cartwheels, which causes my burlap thing to fall off, and I try to put it back on, but I can't because I'm so happy. I'm so healed. And then Jesus, there's the title card of Jesus saying, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." And I'm creeping up and I'm crying, but I didn't have time to actually cry. So some of the tears, so I just squirted a bunch of Visine in my eyes. And then the title card at the end. And then some dance music comes on and says, "And the beginning," as you see just Lucy's feet and shoes and the bottom of her cloak and the bottom of my cloak and my shoes, and we're dancing together. You just see our feet dancing together and as we skip off together, and that's the end of our little film. And it was actually a really cool, creative experience. And I wanted to share that little film with you for several reasons. One, because it is one of all the creative things that I've done in my life, and I've done quite a few. I must say that's one of my favorite things that I've ever done. It was so simple, and working with my teenage niece, and each of us sharing our gifts, and telling a Bible story, and telling it in our own language, and it was great, and it was so well received. We showed it at the church the next day, and everybody loved it, and because they have a big screen there, and so I wanted to share that. That's one of my favorite stories, and I wanted to share that also with you because I love stories, and I think you might love stories. And what's so great is the Bible is filled with stories, and all sorts of invitations for us to find fun and unique, creative ways of telling those stories. And I hope in our time together, we will together explore ways that we can bring stories to life on stage, or maybe we can do some films, or we can do do a little musical, do any sorts of things that we can tell the stories, because that's such a great way of bringing texts that often when you read them, they're kind of boring, we've heard them a million times, or they're confusing. When you put them on their feet and you use your own inspiration, how the Spirit seems to be leading you to tell the story, oftentimes, this is one of my favorite reasons to be creative when we, with our Bible stories. Is that oftentimes there's messages about the story that we never realized until we got kind of creative with them and started moving around. And for me, doing this story, what I always think about now when I hear this text about the women being healed of the hemorrhage, I think back to that little film that we made, and how always the biggest rise we get from whoever's watching, the congregation, audience, or whatever, is that period where we're going on about all the different things that the woman had tried that didn't work. You know, it's a very funny little fruit thing. And we laugh about that partly because they're just such wacky things, but also there's a truth there, I think, probably for most of us, that oftentimes when we're not feeling well, we go to the doctor and we get something that's supposed to make us feel better, and then that doesn't actually work, so then we have to come back and then we try again, and then we try again and again. It can get really frustrating, and it seems that they are going more and more off the sails to try and find what's going to heal us. And then we go off into some special kind of diet, perhaps, or a sonar bath, or perhaps we're going to wear more purple. And sometimes some of these more unusual things really help, and sometimes the drugs that we get really help. But what the Bible will tell us is that our journey to healing never ends until we have met Jesus. That Jesus actually is the source of what true healing is all about. And the healing that we may experience may not be necessarily a physical healing. Healing, God heals us in all sorts of ways. But that Jesus and the Spirit of God Jesus was so full of it, made so available to everyone, brings us a sense of peace and a sense of love and a sense of well-being, no matter what we may be going through. And that is something that is our journey of healing, not only in our physical path, but it's also in our emotional and spiritual and psychological, in our inner path. We may be experiencing a lot of suffering inwardly because we're feeling really lonely, or we are feeling really agitated and angry and frustrated because something has unexpectedly pulled the rug out from under us, and it's unfair, we don't know what to do. Or we may be feeling obsessive or addicted to something. Or we may be feeling really angry at what's going on in the world. And we're doing whatever we can to feel better. And there are all sorts of things, all sorts of ways that the society, the world around us will suggest that we should embrace that's going to make us feel better. Perhaps it's joining a dating site, or it's reading more self-help books, watching more Oprah, finding our Congress people, marching, fighting with people on Facebook, whatever it might be. And you know, sometimes these things do help. I'm not trying to be dismissive of any of that. But we probably find, as we invest ourselves in those sorts of things, that it doesn't really give us a sense of real healing. We might have a little bit of, you know, temporary relief, but there's something really missing. And what the Bible will tell us is that we are invited to keep journeying and keep looking around and letting ourselves be open to an encounter with Jesus. Because that is what will bring us the balm in Gilead that we really need and that we can share with others. And the good news that the Bible tells us is that Jesus is always there, available to heal us. We just need to keep out there and maybe recognize where that Jesus is. Because chances are he's not going to be the guy that, well, he could be Jeremy, or the guy that looks like Jeremy, you know, with the beard and the, but it could be you, so I don't mean to, you're dissing my staff, right at the top, like, who we hired, yeah. So, but I wanted to, and I think probably, I'm guessing that many of you have a healing story that, where you have encountered Jesus, and he has actually brought you peace and love and well-being, even in the midst of whatever you're going through, a sense that you were really healed. And these two are really important stories to love, to embrace, to share. I wanted to share with you my healing story, or one of my first healing story. I'll make it quite brief, but I was happy to tell healing stories because I love them. And my healing story took place when I was a young teenager. It was the early 70s, not the late 70s, when I won the Tacky Spinning Des Moines contest. In the early 70s, Des Moines was really boring, and I hated being there. I was in junior high, and I had ended up having to, my parents lived kind of on sort of the other side of the road, as it were, the boundary, and I had to go, all my friends were going to the really cool junior high. I was going to kind of a lower class, tougher junior high, where I just wasn't used to that community. It was really hard for me to make friends there. Plus I was 13 and I was going through horrible puberty. I had terrible skin, I had braces, I was overweight. I liked to cover my skin with this real pasty makeup that was just awful. I wore black eyeliner because that's what you did in the 70s, so I looked like a bad cousin to, you know, Herman Munster. And plus it was the early 70s, so you had to wear the horrible clothes, and I was just so miserable. And my parents couldn't really understand. They had a lot of gifts, but understanding that kind of stuff was not their gift. I just wanted to get out of my skin, and I was trying anything to move away. I wanted to go to prep school, and that didn't work. I fell in love with the movie Camelot. I just went to live in Camelot, and I think my hair is still long, because that's what Gregory wore, hair in Camelot. I mean, I was truly very unhappy, the most unhappy I've ever been in my life. But there was my church, and there was this couple at my church who loved youth. They weren't on staff, they just had a heart for youth, and they decided to start a folk group. Because in those days, you know, singing all those songs from Godspell and Jesus Christ Superstar and Simon and Garfunkel and all that sort of thing were really popular. And so they just invited us, and one of them played the guitar, and we would have folk group rehearsal, and they were so fun, and they made me and everybody feel so beautiful and so welcome and so important. And they really encouraged all of us to feel that way about one another, and we really did. But my experience in that folk group of the early 70s, I think more than any other time, more other place with any other person, saved my life. And it made me feel at peace and full of love and feel whole, even though I'm still in many ways feeling miserable.
And when I think about why church is important, why the Christian journey is important, it has to do with that healing experience, because I know what healing is like. And as I get to know all of you, and get to know, where you're from and what you love to do, and about the church and what you love to do about the church, I would also love to hear, if you have one, your or one of your healing stories, where you have experienced the presence of Christ, the presence of God in Christ, heal you. It may not be about a physical thing, maybe, who knows? It may not have happened in the church. It may have happened at school or with some surprising stranger on the street or out in nature or whatever. But I would love to hear your story. Not just because I love to hear those stories, and I think you love to tell them, but I would like us to think about those as sort of our elevator speeches as we go out into the world and people ask us, well, what's so good about church? Or why would you want to be a Christian? Or why do you do that thing you do on Sunday? You can tell them a story about how you were healed. And it was only because of the presence of God that happened. My guess is that will have as profound an influence on them as anything they've ever heard. So I lift that up to you. I invite you to think about that, and also to be thinking about if you're going through something right now that you're struggling for healing, to in our time of communion, to ask God for some help with that thing that you're struggling with, or give God thanks for the healings that God through Christ have brought to you. And let's make that the center of our celebration and our journey this week. How does that sound? Okay, so just like Jesus when he brought the little girl back to life, let's have something to eat. How's that for an introduction to communion?